to do
Yes.
is that if we were convincing the company to pay these pretty high rates, if you might recall earlier in my evidence, I said that there was some frustration from the company that I was digging in and demanding the pay rates, which I was, and other conditions for the workforce. There was some frustration within the company that, well, I was seeking so much for the workers that it was no different to some of the other unions that they felt were less desirable on that site. I made it clear I was up for the productivity part of it, that is 13 floating RDOs and 13 fixed RDOs, but it is clear that when we were willing to engage in the big project, that it could well be that other unions might contest it. So what I was seeking to do was to make sure that we had full engagement after the EBA, but at that point I did hand over all of the matters of the day-to-day, the industrial and the transactions, to other officials in our union.
Are you evading my question?
No.
Well,
Mr. Stoljar, just a moment. Mr. Shorten, I think Mr. Stoljar, whatever else can be said about him, has been very indulgent about your style of answering some of his questions.
Thank you.
A lot of your answers are non-responsive. Some of your answers are responsive, but then add something that isn't responsive. Now, what you've been saying in what I am calling non-responsive parts may well be true, may well be relevant. Parts of it are very interesting. It's quite useful to learn about the difficulties of negotiating EBAs in relation to very large sites with many trades and many different sub-areas. You, if I can be frank about it, have been criticised in the newspapers in the last few weeks, and I think it's generally believed that you have come here in the hope that you'll be able to rebut that criticism, or a lot of it. I'm not very troubled about that, though I can understand that you are, and it's legitimate for you to use this occasion to achieve your ends in that regard. What I'm concerned about more is your credibility as a witness. A witness, and perhaps your self-interest as a witness as well. A witness who answers each question, yes, no, I don't remember, or clarifies the question and so on, gives the cross-examiner very little material to work with. It's in your interest to curb these, to some extent, extraneous answers. Mr. Stoljar has a plan. Plans may succeed or they may fail, but he's entitled to pursue it. Another aspect of your self-interest that worries me is this. You are obviously an extremely busy person. You, as at the start of yesterday, it was contemplated you'd be here yesterday, today, and some other occasion, probably late August or early September. But it may partly be Mr. Stoljar's fault, but I think it is partly your fault that we are proceeding rather slowly through the material. Now, you don't have to accept what I'm saying to you. It is offered, as it were, ex gratia, with a view to the vindication and prosecution, as it were, of your own interests as a witness here. So I think, to be frank, and I'm open to persuasion to the contrary, this is only a prima facie view formed on the spur of the moment. These questions he's been asking you about discussions with Mr. Sass about the payment of either $100,000 a year plus GST or the payment of some sum directly to the union. You said you don't remember, and I think you said you didn't positively remember, and he said, but you can't deny it. And that triggered another of these long answers. I think we all understand that by 2007, 2008, by 2008 you were completely out of it, by 2007 you were substantially out of Victorian affairs. But I do think some concentration on your part on giving a proper answer, as full an answer as the question demands, but no more than that, is in your self-interest, and it's something Mr. Stoljar is entitled to. Yes, Mr. Stoljar.
Thank you.
My question was, did you have any discussions with the Tees John Holland team in the negotiations for the EBA about payments being made directly to the AWU on an annual basis, even if you didn't talk about specific amounts?
I would have had discussions with John Holland about the EBA and then about how we would organise the site. It may well be that there was discussions about training and the like.
Well, do I draw from that that the answer to my question is yes? You did have discussions with the John Holland team during the negotiations for the EBA about payments being made directly from the John Holland joint venture on an annual basis, although you didn't specify a particular amount.
I would have had discussions, and I'm mindful of the Commissioner's suggestion, I would have had discussions about the EBA and how the AW would organise after the EBA to make sure we had an active presence that would and could have involved services being delivered by the AW to make sure we had an engaged membership at the site.
And you discussed those matters with the John Holland team, did you?
Yes,
And
I would have.
did you record anything about the discussions to that effect in writing?
Not to my knowledge, no.